Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this can be my review for The Flash Season 1, Episode 2, Fastest Man Alive. And I was really looking forward to this episode. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch The Flash since, like, August, because I watched the pilot, if you remember, back in August, when it was, free to watch online. That's when I watched it, so I reviewed it back then, and I was really looking forward to this episode, because the way Episode 1 ended, I was so hyped up for this episode, and this episode did not disappoint. I love this episode. I actually thought this episode was better than the first episode. I can already tell the show is going to be amazing. This show is already so much better than Gotham. Like, Gotham's great, but this show is just, oh my god, it's so much better. I love the way they are, just... The show is very much like Arrow now, and I loved everything about this episode. Thought it was fantastic, and let's just get to it. So, we hear this monologue of Barry, kind of talking about how it's a slow day. He's running towards a fire in downtown Central City, going 352 miles per hour while Cisco monitors him, and Barry overshoots the fire by 6 blocks. He backtracks, and Caitlin catches Cisco, and she's not happy. So Barry finds a child in the burning building and speeds her out, followed by 2 other people. And once everyone is free, Barry is around the corner and he calls into Cisco, only to be on the receiving end of Caitlin's anger. So Barry's about to run back to Star Labs, only to be overcome for a few seconds by a dizzy spell. So basically, we find out why Caitlin's upset. Caitlin is upset for that Barry is out being a hero. He reminds her that they agreed to work together, but she says that was only to find metahumans, not to deal with crimes and fires. So, Harrison joins the conversation, and again, Harrison's character is, I'm definitely very suspicious about his character. His character is by far the most interesting character on the show, and especially after this episode, definitely his character is the most interesting character, because of, like, we don't know why he's there, we know he actually isn't in that wheelchair, just, it's great that they did that choice. I think it's awesome. So, Harrison joins the conversation, and while he does not specifically tell Barry to stop, he does advise caution, which I think is, makes sense. He needs to advise caution. And they're all aware that Barry's vitals spiked for a few seconds while he was out. But Barry lies and says that everything is fine, and, he says, everything was fine about it, So, Joe calls Barry from a murder scene, wanting to know where his CSI is, and Barry speeds out, and Harrison wonders when Barry will realize he forgot to his clothes. So, basically, Barry realizes he's still in his Flash gear and takes note of a clothing store nearby, because this is not like Arrow. In Arrow, people know that Oliver is a vigilante, but in this, he actually is a superhero, so he doesn't want people to know yet. And I do feel he's eventually going to tell people, but at this point, we're early into the show, so I thought this was a fun scene. So Barry walks to the scene where Joe and the captain are taking note of the price tag on his jackets, because he just bought it. So Eddie shows up with surveillance footage showing one attacker. However, Barry is hopping around the shoe tracks around the body and says there were at least 6 attackers, all wearing the same shoes, and with the same shoe size, the same as the captain's. So Barry realizes what he said and backtracks, embarrassing himself further. And at the precinct, Joe is very angry at Barry for his behavior, and Barry's trying to lighten the mood by making he can run a mile in 3 seconds. Because Barry was just like joking around about this and didn't really know what he was doing. So Joe's obviously kind of upset at him, but Joe sends him to work helping them to catch the killer. That's what he wants them to do. And then we see a flashback, and I'm so happy that the Flash is doing what Arrow's doing, because, Arrow, it's at its best when it shows flashbacks, and I'm glad that the Flash is doing the same exact thing. That's something I definitely love about these shows, and I'm glad that they are both doing that. That definitely is great. I love that. So, we see a flashback to Barry's childhood, and of course, if you remember, Joe adopted Barry after his mother died. Not really adopted, basically adopted him, took him in, and basically we see that Joe tracks Barry down after the boy ran away to visit his father, his dad, and Joe tells Barry that he can't see his dad, and young Barry tells Joe that he is not his father, and, he yells, "I hate you." So that was definitely very big what happened. I wasn't expecting that, but, like, that was definitely a very big scene. Um, there are more flashbacks, but, like, that was definitely a very well done scene in my opinion, and it was definitely very sad because Joe is kind of Barry's father, but, he's not Barry's father. His real father is in prison, and he's trying to protect Barry, but, Barry's gonna do what he's gonna do. So Barry is in his lab and a machine breaks, and Barry uses his super speed to shake the chemical vial while he was testing, achieving the needed result. He has another speed dizzy spell, but again it fades quickly. So Iris comes in, and right away, once again, even though Iris is dating Eddie, they had so much more they still have chemistry in this episode. I still feel that Iris and Barry are eventually going to date, because to me, Eddie just seems like a too nice of a guy. Like, I feel like Eddie is definitely hiding something because he just seems too nice to me. We haven't seen any flaws from him. He seems like Mr. Perfect, and I don't feel that Eddie is as perfect as we think he is, definitely, and I think definitely he's hiding something. I don't know what it is, but I feel he's hiding something. So, basically, she reminds Barry that he promised to help her write an article on a presentation by Simon Stagg, and Eddie enters after watching them play it cool, and Barry reminds them that he knows about them and they can kiss, which he says he does, and they do, and Eddie thanks Barry for not telling anyone, and he knows it must be hard for Barry to keep a secret like that. Eddie knows Barry's secret about being the Flash, and he knows that Barry, while he wants to tell Iris, he can't tell her because he needs to protect her. He needs to make sure, for her safety, that she's okay. Plus, he just doesn't want to blow his cover. And I think that definitely is a good move that he hasn't told her yet. I'm fine with that. So, in a big speech, Stagg reveals his newest breakthrough, which involves creating organs for transplants, and instead of taking them from another body, Iris thought that Barry was avoiding her because he was uncomfortable about Eddie. And he reassures her, he tells her it's about work, and Iris is trying to get a quote from Stagg, but is put off by his bodyguard. So several men with guns, and at this point it's kind of just a fun type of episode. But then we get a huge scene here. Several men with guns enter, dressed exactly like the killer from the surveillance tape earlier. One of them insists on everyone handling over their jewelry. A security guard enters and tries to stop the robbers, but they're shooting at him, and Barry speeds the man to safety and starts to follow the robbers, only to be overcome by another dizzy spell, and he faints. So Iris then wakes up Barry, and she has no idea what's going on at this point. She's very confused. He covers by saying he was just trying to get the plate number and confesses to fainting. I thought that was definitely very. Sorry, I'm getting a Skype message. Sorry guys, but basically, they go inside, and I think, by the way, Barry's doing a great job with keeping his identity from Iris. Definitely, he's doing a great job with that. Eventually, though, it's going to get to him. He's going to tell her. I know he's going to. And I know when he tells her, he's probably going to do by accident because the pressure just gets to him. So, they go inside where Joe and Eddie are investigating, and Joe overhears the guard talking about what happened. And he quickly figures out what happened. So, he pulls Barry aside and scolds him for trying to be a hero. He doesn't really want him to be a hero. So, he makes Barry promise to stop. He doesn't want Barry to continue basically being a hero. And here's the thing, though. He is upset at what happened because he doesn't want Barry to go on this mission. He wants him to be fully committed to his job. But here's the thing. Barry will do what he needs to do. He needs to save the world. He's doing this because Oliver told him he needs to be a hero. Again, Oliver's the vigilante, Barry's the hero. So that is why I think Barry is so into the idea of being a hero, because he wants to save the world. He wants to be a hero. He wants to make an impact on the world, definitely. And I think that's definitely very good. And Joe needs to accept that. And I think definitely, basically, I think he definitely needs to accept that. So, at Star Labs, Caitlin is furious that Barry didn't tell them about the dizzy spells, and they decide to test him by tracking his vitals. Well, and I thought this scene was kind of fun. Barry's running on a treadmill that Cisco tricked to handle Barry's speed, and he seemed like literally going at lightning speed. But then, and at first it's fine, but then Harrison notices a problem with Barry's glucose levels right before Barry goes flying off the treadmill. So he wants to find out maybe what's going, he wants to find out what's going on there. So Joe goes looking for Barry at his lab, and he finds this hidden board with all the information he gathered about his mom's murder. Now, the second he saw that, I was like, okay, I know what they're trying to show here. This is showing that he is going to help Barry with his, track down his mom's killer. Because, Barry still wants to do that. All his life he's wanted to do that. And, of course, I'm sure he still wants to do that because that's his mom. He cares about her, and he still wants to find out what happens. So, obviously, he still wants to do something about that. So in another flashback, we see another flashback, and Joe comes home and sees Iris, and he asks where Barry is. And Iris at first says he's taking a shower. She lies to protect Barry. Joe sees through it. He says, tell me the honest truth. and she admits that he ran off again. So, in Barry's lab, Joe finds Barry's Star Lab sweatshirt, and Barry wakes up to find that they had to give him 40 IVS to get his fluids up. And they need to adjust his diet to his changed metabolism. That's basically what's going on here, that they need to change his diet. So Joe arrives, and I agree. I think this scene was definitely very well done. I gotta say, Jesse L. Martin and Grant Gustin were amazing in the scene. I mean, their acting was just so good, and just amazing scene here. So he arrives, he's angry at everyone for letting who he calls his kid endanger himself, which I like hearing him say it's his kid because he looks at Barry as a son. He looks out for him like a son. Joe needs to realize, though, that Barry is no longer a kid. He is a grown man who makes his own decisions, and I think Joe is having a hard time coming to terms with that because all his life he has been there for Barry. All his life Barry has worked for him. That's just what Barry's done, and Joe's kind of having a hard time, seeing Barry do his own thing. So, once again, Barry says that, and I agree with what Barry says here, Joe's not his father and cannot stop him. And I agree. If Barry wants to save the world, let him. Joe can't do anything about it. Even though he wants to, he can't. And I definitely agree with Barry saying that. So, Joe lectures the entire room on what they are doing, and he leaves. He's not exactly happy about what they're doing. So in an alleyway, the killer, a man named Black, meets Stagg's bodyguard. And Black wants to kill Stagg immediately, but the guard wants to plan more carefully, and they argue with the guard leaving, telling Black he should have brought his army. And Black begins to vibrate and separates into copies of them. And I gotta say, the villain this episode was a kick-ass villain. He was awesome. He starts to turn to copies of himself, and he says, I am an army. And, that's an awesome power. Wouldn't it just be awesome to just have the power of duplicating yourself? I'd love that. I personally would just love that. That'd be awesome. I could make all these reviews for you guys, one shoe, and it'd be awesome. So, in Barry's lab, Joe brings a skin sample that was found in the body of Stagg's bodyguard before going to talk to Stagg. So Iris comes in, asks Barry why Joe is mad at him, and Barry lies and says, work. That's basically why. So, Barry asks Iris why she's mad at him, and she reminds Barry that they were supposed to meet so he could explain Stagg's science for her journalism article. And now she needs to write about something else. She needs to write about something else, and Barry apologizes, but Iris is not buying it. And at this point, I was kind of thinking, is Barry gonna maybe tell her? But I'm like, no, it's too early in the show. And he insists that he tell her the truth about what is happening, and he tells Iris everything, and basically, he freezes Iris. He does this at super speed. He tells Iris everything about his ability and feelings for her so that she doesn't hear any of it. And I thought that was very well done because basically it's boggled up inside of him, and I definitely feel it's going to get him to the point where he has to tell her. So they're interrupted by his test results showing that the skin cells of the murderers are baby cells. So that's definitely very interesting. So Eddie and Joe are talking to Stagg about who might be targeting him, and they mention a number of lawsuits against Stagg, including one by Black, and at that moment, Black enters and starts shooting, and Eddie, Joe, and Stagg all take cover, and then at the precinct, Barry sees the police all rushing out, finds out that there is a shootout at Stagg's where Joe is, and Joe covers while Eddie escapes with Stagg. Black separates, which Joe sees. Barry runs in and gets Joe out, then returns to try to talk Black down, but Black is not going to give up, so Barry fights him again, but the duplicates are too many, and Barry's being so hard before he runs to escape. So that was definitely a very intense scene, what happened there. I thought that was definitely extremely intense, and I thought that scene was definitely very well done, the way that was done. So then we see Caitlin patches Barry up while Harrison researches Black online. It turns out that the organ transplant technology was Black's and Stagg stole it, but Barry admits he's not a fighter. And Wells is trying to encourage Barry, but Barry says that all this is a mistake, and he runs out. He's really upset about what happened. So then we see in another flashback, we see young Barry has run all the way to the prison and gets a 5-minute visit with his father, Henry, and basically Henry admits that Joe is keeping Barry away because Henry doesn't want his son to see him like this. He doesn't want to see him defenseless, basically, in jail, and Barry begs the guard to let his father go and insists that Henry's innocent, but Henry tells Barry he can't help and that he needs to listen to Joe, who has arrived by this point. So Barry then stops at a cafe where Eddie and Iris are watching, and Eddie on the news talking about the shootout. Barry congratulates Eddie on saving Stagg, and Joe offers to protection to Stagg again. But Stagg says he's beefed up security and threatens Black if he shows up. And Harrison arrives, and he and Stagg insult each other. And I'm like, okay, something's going on there. So Harrison talks to Joe about Barry, and Joe remembers that Wells wanted Barry at Star Lab when he was in a coma, and wants to know if Wells knew from the start. So Harrison confesses that he had suspicions, and Joe doesn't care about saving the city, he just wants to protect Barry. But Harrison says that Barry quit, but it won't matter. He'll try to help someone else and get killed because he doubts himself, and Joe's doubt it's because it's causing Barry's life. And Harrison says that Joe isn't the only one who cares about Barry. And I think that scene was awesome because it really sums up what we're trying to get out here, because there are other people who care about Barry than Joe. Even though Joe is basically his father, he needs to realize there are other people in the world that matter besides him. And I think that scene was definitely very well done because, again, he's having a hard time trying to be a father to Barry. But he needs to realize that he kind of needs to step back a bit. I think that's what Joe is realizing here. He needs to step back a bit and basically let Barry do his own thing. So Barry and Iris are eating at the cafe, and he tells her he's been distant because he had a thing he thought was important, but it turns out he's not good at it. But he is good at being her friend. He wants to help her find a new article, and she says that she has, and actually interests her. And she wants to know about the red streak that's been saving people. But then, before he can tell her anything, Caitlin calls Barry at the point she and Cisco are at Star Labs and basically says, you need to come here now because her and Cisco are at Star Labs, and so is Black. So I'm like, okay, this episode's about to get awesome. Episode was already awesome, but like here I'm like, this is going to be badass because Barry arrives to save them, only to realize it's actually not Black, but one of his replicants, which Caitlin grew, but it's an empty shell, and the real Black needs to think for it. So therefore, if Barry takes out the prime Black, the others should fail. So should fall. So he should look for a weakness like fatigue, and Joe arrives and shoots Replicant, not knowing what it is, and Joe admits that the police can't handle things like this, only Barry can stop Black, and when he said that, I'm like, yep, this is gonna get awesome. Because Stagg is in his office, and Black arrives, kills his guards. Barry arrives just in time to save Stagg. He tries to talk to Black again, even as he dodges bullets and fights with Black and his duplicates, and Black admits he's actually not the stolen tech. And I thought this was very well done, in my opinion. I thought this scene was, I thought this was definitely very well done, because we actually find out what Black's motive is. His wife, Elizabeth, needed a heart transplant, and he invented the tech to save her, but she died after Stagg robbed Black, so that's why he's after Stagg. So Barry's very overwhelmed as Black makes hundreds of duplicates, literally hundreds of duplicates. I gotta say, the action in the scene was awesome, the choreography in the scene was awesome, like, so well done. The team is coaching Barry on finding the prime Black, but it's Joe's words that get it through to him. And I thought that was great because the tension between Barry and Joe was the best person to do that. And I thought that was amazing writing, definitely. So Barry takes off through the crowd of Blacks until he sees one Perspire, and attacks, but once he knocks out Black, Prime, the others all clap. So the Prime rises and runs at Barry, who dodges. Black goes flying out the window, and Barry catches him. He's trying to pull him up, but unfortunately, Black replicates extra hands to force Barry to release him, but he falls to his death. Now, this kind of made me feel something, and I did not come up with this theory. My friend Kane LaPlante, aka Kid of Awesome, did. Barry wants to be a hero. Now, connecting this to Arrow, because we know that Arrow versus Flash fight is going to be coming up. Not for a while, like I'd say, like, November. We do know it's coming, though. So I really feel this scene was showing that, basically, that Barry, that Oliver's not going to be happy if he finds out that Barry did this, because if you remember, Oliver has never killed someone in, like, it's been such a long time since Oliver ever killed someone. So, if Oliver finds out that Barry did this, I don't think that Oliver's going to be happy with Barry. I personally don't think he will. I don't know about you guys, but I personally don't think he's going to be happy and he's going to be kind of upset with him. So that might start, like, the fight because him and Barry have different visions. Now, granted, Barry did do this by accident, but I feel like he is going to kill people. I really feel like he is because he wants to be a hero. Part of being a hero is knowing when to take someone out. Because as Oliver said, he's the hero. Oliver's just a vigilante. There's a big difference. So, At Star Labs, Harrison comforts Barry and says Black didn't want to be saved, and Cisco nicknames Black Multiplex, and Barry tells Cisco, Caitlin, and Wells and Harrison that they're all with him, and basically started their team. You know, the lightning struck them all, and I thought that was a great scene because he's basically established his team here. He knows who his team is, and I thought that was definitely really good. So, Joe then shows up at Barry's lab with Barry's favorite pizza, and he shows Barry that he knows about his clippings on his mom's murder and offers to help Barry save his father. So, Barry lists all the fatherly things he has done, Joe has done, finally acknowledges that Joe is a father, and I thought that was very good because, you know, even though Barry did have points, Joe is his father. He needs to be he is his father, and he needs to basically listen to Joe because Joe knows what he's talking about. So they end up sharing the pizza, and I thought that was a very good scene. It seemed like that was the last scene of the episode, and basically now we know that they're going to try to find his killer, and I thought that was definitely really cool. You know, he wants to help Barry save his father, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing who his killer is. Now, the next scene kind of makes me suspicious of who his killer is. I don't necessarily think it's Harrison, but I'm not sure after this next scene. Because Harrison goes to Stagg's office, and they both are discussing Black and the red blur that saves Stagg. And Stagg is very fascinated and wants to catch the red blur so he can find a way to duplicate his power and profit from it. However, Harrison stands up, kills Stagg, and says he's called the Flash or he will be one day. So, that was awesome, and I love the way the episode ended. That's basically the end of the episode, and I thought that was an awesome way to end it. And basically, Harrison, whatever he's there for, I don't know how, you know, he knows he's in the future. I definitely feel now he is from the future. He was there to help Barry with something. And maybe he was sent to kill, like, Stagg. Maybe he was sent to kill people. I think that's what Harrison was there for. He was there to kill people. We didn't really get a lot of that, but I like that they're slowly showing that Harrison, you know, has some sort of mission to protect Barry. Definitely he's protecting Barry at this point. So let's talk about the things I really like about this episode. First of all, who do I think is the killer of Barry's father? Honestly, at this point, I have no idea. I will say this, I really hope it's not some random killer that we haven't met yet, because if they do that, I'm not going to be happy with this show. I like it when it's a character that we don't suspect. I honestly don't know who did it. I can't really think. I do, however, feel, now I don't know if it's Eddie, but I do feel that there's something about Eddie that I just feel he's too nice. I feel he's too nice right now. I feel he's too nice to Barry. He seems like a perfect guy, and when someone's a perfect guy, and they're not the main character, then there's definitely something wrong there, in my opinion, because I don't think he's the perfect guy at all. I think he definitely has a lot of flaws that we don't know about. As far as this whole red streak thing goes, I think it's really cool that people are now just thinking of the Flash as the red blur, because that's what he is. He wears that red blur, of course. He has that red streak, and my question is the pressure going to get to Barry to the point where he's eventually just going to have to tell Iris? Because of what's happened, you know, because of what happened this episode, there was a point where I actually thought he was going to tell her, and he did, but he didn't tell her to the point where she heard him. He told her in, like, you know, as he was running fast, so I thought that was definitely a very well done scene. I really enjoyed that. I also love seeing Barry establish his team. I thought that was very well done. Barry killing Black, do you feel this is going to have some repercussions on him with Oliver? We do know, because I saw this in the Arrow promo, that in the next episode, Barry's going to see Oliver. So is he going to tell Oliver that he killed someone? I don't know if Oliver's exactly going to be happy about this. You know, he's going to tell him he should try to save him. Again, it was an accident, but who knows? Maybe Oliver's not going to be so happy about this, but I don't know. Overall, guys, I love this episode. I'm loving where the show is going. This show is just so, so good. I love everything about it. And let me know what you guys saw this episode. That's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys in my next review, which will be my review for tonight's episode of Sons of Anarchy, which I'm so excited for. And I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.